Hello, and welcome to Chapter 1 of the 15 Invaluable Laws for Growth. Again, my name is Tom Miller. I'm going to be your certified coach, driving you through your first chapter of this mastermind, your first lesson, okay? The law of intentionality. And everything, right? Everything comes from being intentional in life. There's a big difference between good intentions and intentional action. And this chapter is going to help you focus on that. And this chapter was born from John was asked, he talks about in the introduction in the first chapter, that he was asked a huge question. Do you have a personal plan for growth? So I ask you the same thing. Do you have a personal plan for growth? Right? Because growth is not natural. It just doesn't occur, right? We just don't get better because we get older, even though that's a saying. We get better by intentional action compounding over time, right? Learning from experiences and reflection. I'm going to read here in this at the end of the introduction, and he says, to discover your purpose, you need to grow in self-awareness. To become a better human being, you need to grow in character. To advance in your career, you need to grow in your skills. To be a better spouse or parent, you need to grow in relationships. To reach your financial goals, you will need to grow in your knowledge about how money works. So growth is everything, but it's not actually natural to do or natural to feel. So I'm asking you to lean in right now. I want you to lean in and get ready to grow, to begin your plan for growth. Because John says right on the first page, right on page 1, he says, but working hard doesn't guarantee success, and hope is not a strategy. Okay? So there, John talks about all these gaps, these growth gaps. And I mean, the greatest gap in life is what we know and what we do, right? So we know and understand what a good diet looks like, but we don't always do it. We know that exercise is important for us, but we don't always do it. So the first gap that John talks about is the assumption gap, right? And that gap specifically talks about, I'm already there. Right? It's the assumption that I'm there. It's my self-awareness that I'm at that point, right? So I'm just assuming that I can't do it, or I'm just assuming that I'm already there, one of those two. The second gap that he talks about is the knowledge gap. Folks think that they have to have all this great knowledge to be at this whole higher level. No, you don't need to know everything to get started. Zig Ziglar taught us that you don't have to be great to start, but to be great someday, you have to get started at some point. So don't worry, don't allow the knowledge gap to close you in, all right? The next was the timing gap that John talked about. It's not the right time, or I'll get started on Monday, right? How many diets have proposed, I propose that it starts on Monday. Okay, there is never a great time. There's a great story that this guy who wants shade in his backyard goes up to this farmer and he says, hey, I want the most shadiest backyard. I just want to be covered. I want to be comfortable all the time. I don't want the sun to bother me. When is the best time to plant a tree? And the farmer looks back and says, well, either 35 years ago or right now. So don't let timing impact your intentional action. Yesterday ended last night. It's a new day. Start right now. The next gap that I love that John talks about is the mistake gap, right? That I'm too afraid to make a mistake. Well, little do you know, you barely learn anything, if anything at all, by doing it right the first time. So everything you need to fail, failing forward is really important. Don't be afraid to fail and continue to grow yourself, right? And learn from your mistakes. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results. That's the definition of insanity, okay? So don't worry about the mistakes that you're going to make. Thomas Edison said, I never made a mistake in my life. I just learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb, right? So every time you're growing from your failure, right? And if you're not failing, you're not trying, okay? If you're not failing, you're not trying. The perfection gap, John talks about next. Everybody wants everything to be perfect. When I started this business, needed the perfect website. I needed all the, the perfect name of the company, right? Or I wasn't ready. Listen, just go, right? Do it. Just Howard Fuller, this great educational leader and civil rights movement leader, taught me one time. He said, hey, just be careful how much you look before you leap, because you may never leap. And that's what's happening, right? The perfection gap creates this I'm afraid to go because I don't know, or I don't have everything, or it's not the perfect time, right? So don't worry about perfection. Nobody has been successful based upon perfection of anything. All right. Another gap I want to talk about is the comparison gap, right? We're always comparing ourselves to other people. We're comparing ourselves, they got more than I do, or I want what they got, and that just causes resentment. So you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody. One of my favorite authors and speakers, the author of Start With Why, Simon Sinek, taught us recently during our Live to Lead. He had back-to-back weeks where he was in Google, Google and Motorola, one week, and then he was at Apple the next week. And this is when Google had launched their Zoom, right? Their Zoom product. It was going to be the answer. It was going to be the tablet for everybody and to do everything. And it had this great iOS system. And so the next week he was with Apple, and he wanted to kind of dig a little bit. And he said, I was with Google and Motorola last week, and their tablet, their iOS system is way stronger than yours. And the guy looked at Apple and he said, yeah, I bet it is. That was it. And Simon Sinek realizes, he says, they're not in competition or comparison to anybody else. They're only in competition with themselves. They only want to get better. So the only comparison that you should ever give is where you were a week ago to where you are now, where you were a month ago to where you are now, where you were a year ago right now. It's a great exercise. Go back 5 years, right? Go back 5 years and just write down everything you were doing 5 years ago compared to what you're doing now. Who are your friends? What books are you reading? Where is your income? How is your family doing? How are your relationships 5 years from now? When I think about my last 5 years, incredible difference. And it all came from intentional action, right? And self-awareness. Okay. So those are the gaps that I want to talk about. There's a few more in the book, but those are a few that really, really spoke to me, and I had some great awareness and understanding with each one. So how long do you have to be intentional, you ask? Every day, right? And here's a great example of intentional living. I was really fortunate enough to be part of a group called Eat Smart, Move More, and Weigh Less, and it was through the state health plan. And we had this great coach, Greg, and he was our fat coach, he called us. And he himself had lost a lot of weight. And I was really fortunate. I followed the program well, and I was intentional. I was measuring food. I was counting calories. I was getting my 30 minutes of activity in per day is all he asked from us.
So I was really lucky, and I lost like 40 pounds and multiple inches off of my waist. And the one thing that Greg had told me is he had said, you need to throw away any of your fat pants. You need to throw them away immediately because complacency is going to creep in, and at some point you're going to gain this weight back. And I didn't, I did it. I followed directions. I'm a good follower, and I'm so glad that Greg did, because there was about four times over the next year that I got really, really tight in the pants, right? So when I talk about being intentional, it wasn't just about that 90-day program that Greg had us through. The intentionality. If I wanted to maintain that waist size, I had to continue to the measuring and all those other strategies I was using. Walking 30 minutes every day, counting my calories. And so every time that my pants got tight, I realized that I wasn't being intentional anymore, right? I had good intentions to keep that weight off, but I wasn't being intentional. So if Rome wasn't built in a day, how long are you willing to give yourself? You have to believe in yourself on a daily basis. All right, it's been 2 years now. I won't say that I'm exactly that same waist size, but I continue to know what the strategies are. Going back to that gap, there's a gap between what I know and what I do. And when my gap was closing was when Greg was my coach and I was having intentionality Each week we had a weigh-in. There was an accountability partner. So you think about a great mastermind group. It was that class. That class was a great accountability group. So it's really important that if you want to build Rome, you need to transition to intentional growth. You need to transition to intentional growth, not just good intentions, intentional action leading to personal growth. So I want you to take the time to ask yourself these big questions now. Where do you want to go in life? What direction do you want to go? What is the farthest you can imagine going? And how long will it take? Remember, when I told you, I never thought I would ever be a size 32 anymore, and it probably was a little, you know, some really high expectations there. And when I bought all those pants, obviously staying in a 32 might have been unrealistic, but it certainly, you know, I made it, and I never thought I would. Just like I've talked about earlier, I never thought I would spend a day without gambling, but I've done it. I've done it for over 10 years now, and it doesn't even really come to a thought of mine. So where do you want to go in life? How can this program be one of the catalysts to help you get there? What direction do you want to go? And most importantly, how long will it take in our world of impatience and instant gratification? You have to understand whatever behavior and habit has taken you to this point right now that you want to change. It could take at least that long, maybe longer, to reshape. One thing when I did stop gambling, I had to kind of do an audit of my day to find out what part of the day was troublesome for me, right? What part of the day did those behaviors creep in? And I realized that it was pretty much after I was done teaching, so 3:30 till about 6:30 every night. So what I did is I took my running clothes with me after school, and I would go run at the beach. And by the time I ran 3 to 5 miles and got home, my brain was too exhausted to even think about gambling, right? That was an intentional strategy towards growth, right? Because I had identified where my area of weakness was, right? Where was I most vulnerable? So how long did that take? It took a good solid 90 days before I even really had a very strong understanding or belief in myself, but it's still a daily working on me. So when I ask the question, how long will it take? The other question should be, how long should it take? Because your life is worth it, right? How long are you willing to put in the time? Because this is the only shot that you're going to get on our earth. I still use this strategy. I learned this from John Maxwell. I try to wake up still every day at 5 o'clock to get my workout in, to get my reading done, or any additional work. Because if I don't, I just, at the end of the day, I'm just not able to fit it all in. We're all battling on the same 24 hours. It's the only way that we're all consistent. So John said when he was found himself procrastinating before he went to bed, he would tell himself, do it now, do it now, do it now, 40 times, right? He would look at his list, the list of things that he would have to do when he woke up, and then he would do the same thing. So if his alarm went off, do it now, no, really, do it now, do it now, do it now. There's still many days that I find myself in my brain saying, do it now, get up, do it now, go, you got to go now, do it now, or you're going to feel worse later, you're not going to get your workout in, whatever it is. So seriously, what are you waiting for? There is no perfect time. All right? Don't let that gap fool you. So do it now. Take that time. Write down what you're going to do. What's going to be your first action step? Dr. Martin Luther King told us you don't have to see the entire staircase to get to the second floor. All you need to see is what's the next step. So whatever it is, do it now. Right? Face that fear factor. Right? The fear of failure. The fear of trading security for the unknown. The fear of being overextended on resources. The fear of what other people think. You have to give up the right to care what other people think of you. As long as you are making the best decisions for you as a human being and getting to where you want to be, building that Rome, don't matter what other people think. and the fear of pushing others away, I guarantee you, when you start working on yourself, when you start feeling better about yourself, some of the closest people in your lives will be the first ones to try to tear you down. They are those crabs in a bucket sometimes. So don't worry about pushing other people away. And when you find yourself at the head of the class, it's time to find a new class. And sometimes you have to leave some of those people in your rearview mirror. Right? So face these fear factors. Failure is fantastic, right? Because that's how we learn. Right? It's okay. It's okay to take on the unknown. I tell this story a lot. My grandmother. I mean, we're over 2 years into this business now, and every time I still talk to her, she always says to me, "Tommy, can you pay your bills? I wish you'd just go back to that old job." Right? I love the unknown. I love every day waking up knowing that I'm going to have a challenge to hopefully help somebody else. Right? I don't have that daily schedule. So I want you to reflect on this question: which emotion is stronger for you? The desire to change and grow, or one of these fears? Because fears are only in your head. They don't exist. They only exist within your brain. Think about that. There is some scary reality at times, but if you set yourself up for success and have a plan your work and work your plan, there is no fear. Believe in yourself because you're worth it. Right? So which emotion is stronger, the desire to change and grow, or one of these fears? I love this visual. That's why I wanted to make sure that we added some visuals to the end here. So the law of intentionality, accidental growth to intentional growth. This is in your book, and I want you to take the time to go through these. You know, does your planning always start at tomorrow, or do you start right now, even if you only got 5 minutes to work on it? Are you waiting for something to happen to you, or are you taking responsibility for your own growth? Do you learn only from mistakes, or do you learn before the mistakes happen? Asking other people, right? Researching, finding a mentor. Do you depend on luck, or do you rely on working hard? Right? Do you put your trust in other people creating your future, or do you want to make it for you? Do you quit early because it's easy, or do you knock over those walls? Because walls were built to keep out the weak people, right? That's what barriers are for. They're to keep out the weak. Do you fall easily into bad habits, or do you fight for making new habits? Right? John Maxwell shared that the illiterate of the future will not be those who can't read or write. It'll be those who fail to have the ability to unlearn what they learned and relearn new habits, relearn new strategies. Do you talk big, or do you follow through and execute? Do you play it safe, or do you take risks? Do you think like a victim mentality? It's always someone else's fault. Or do you think like a learner? What's your mindset? Closed or open? Do you rely on only your talent, or do you realize that charisma will get you in the door, but character keeps you in the room? And how many books have you read after graduation? This is always one of my favorite when people tell me they haven't read books in years. I know exactly where they fall on the scale. Or do you only believe in yourself and you never stop learning? So that's going to be our teaching for this chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had some great golden nuggets fall in your lap. I hope your awareness is growing. And most importantly, I hope that you know that you are worth. You are priceless. Right? You are a gift. You are 1 in a 500th trillion chance of living. That's how unique you are. 1 in 500 trillion chances that you would be born and have the DNA and the character that you have. 1 in 500 trillion. So how are you going to take that gift and make sure that you give that gift to others. Join us next week as we'll be focusing on the law of awareness. Have a blessed day.